So I mentioned before that the reason God's interest in creating the world, the reason that we're here, the reason that time and space exists, the reason that the Milky Way galaxy exists, the reason that planet Earth exists, is for us to unite matter and spirit. But there's another reason. There's another reason, another motivation, an equally real and true motivation that God had for creating everything. Not just the universe, but the framework in which it exists, time and space. And this motivation that God had and has is, in the words of the source texts, lahativ libruav, which means to do good to his creations, to do good to the things that he creates, to the work of his hands. What does it mean that God created the universe to do good to creation? Although we don't always understand how and why, God is absolutely good. And the nature of something that's good is that it wants to do good. It wants to do good for others. What's the best thing that God could possibly do for us? For any entity, for any individual? When I was in high school, whenever there was a graduation, there were 2 awards for every subject. For the Hebrew subjects and for science and math and history, etc., etc. There was an excellence award, which was the award for the person who excelled, the person who got the best mark. And there was a second award. The second award was the achievement award. And the person who got the achievement award may have gotten 57% on the end of year exam. But when that student came in at the beginning of the year and got 13, and went home and studied and did homework and asked questions and put in effort and put in more effort, and the next test they got 23, and then they got up to a 28 and a 34, and eventually they made it up to 48 or 53 or whatever they got up to, that 53 in some ways is worth more than the other student's 100. That student who got 100% on the test and got the excellence award, they may have gotten 100 had they taken the test on day 1 before they attended any of the classes, because they're just an unusually gifted person. They didn't achieve anything. They didn't change. They didn't grow. They didn't make anything new. It's just the way they are. They just did their thing. Lions in the wild hunt game, and this person gets 100% on tests. It's just their nature. But you have the student who came in at the beginning and started off on a 13 and a 17 and a 23 and a 28 and managed to get up to barely a pass to a 52% on the end of year exam. That 52 that student got was an achievement. What does an achievement mean? It means that this student turned themselves into a new person. They changed. The person that did that exam and got 52, 53% at the end of the year is not the same one that came in the beginning of the year and got 13 or 17. They worked, and they grew, and they changed. They became a new entity. Animals can't change their nature. Not because they're not good enough, just because they're not designed to. They don't. They just do their thing. We also have natures. And we are, to some degree, animals. We're Homo sapiens, human animals. And we can do the same as the animal kingdom. We can just go through life and respond to our nature. But what is it that sets humans apart from the animal kingdom? There are some things that just make us separate to everything else. Mammals are different to reptiles, etc., and they're different to birds. But humans are different to everything. We're in a separate category. And some of the most important things that separate us are the fact that we have articulate speech, which no other species has. And we can think abstract thoughts. We can understand morals. We can understand the value of growth. We can understand that what we feel like doing isn't always the ideal thing to do. We have that gift. And that gift means that we're able to do things against our natural tendencies, against our human urges, against what we feel like. We can work on ourselves. We can grow. We can become stronger in personality. We can become stronger in character. And when we achieve, when we change, when we grow, when we become someone new, the word creation means, what does it mean to create something? When you create something, when you say someone's creative, what do creative people do? Creative people come up with things that no one else ever thought of. There are some people who are good at critiquing and criticizing and looking at something and figuring out how to make it better. That's not called being creative. That's called being critical or strategic. Being creative means coming up with something new. Creation means making something new. When God created the world wasn't there, and then it was. That's creation. When we become someone new, when we become a person that we weren't yesterday, when we do something that was not our nature to do, that's an act of creation. We're doing something that wasn't there before. The only entity that can create something from nothing is God. And every one of us has a piece of God inside, which means that we can also create and we can also achieve. Creating, achieving, growing is literally an act of God, making something new that wasn't previously there. And because this is something so unique, this is the greatest thing a person can possibly do. It's the most valuable thing we can do. And it's the purpose of existence. The purpose of existence is for us to have the ability to be able to carry out an act of God, to create a new version of ourselves, to create a new version of our environment. When we do that, we are carrying out an act of God. And the fact, because this is the ultimate gift and the greatest thing we could ever do, this is actually built in to the fabric of biology. This is built into our physiology. The most rewarding thing we can do is to achieve. The most powerful thing a person can do, certainly one of them, the most powerful thing, excepting perhaps medication, etc., when there's a clinical basis for it. But if someone's struggling in self-esteem, struggling in confidence, struggling in feeling good about themselves, telling them, oh, you're amazing, is not going to help them that much for maybe more than 28 seconds. You know what they're going to do? They're going to say, shut up. No, I'm not. Because if someone's feeling badly about themselves and we tell them something that they don't believe, you know what they do? They resent it. When someone needs help with self-esteem, it doesn't have to be someone else. It could be myself. If I want to help strengthen my self-esteem, I want to help build my confidence. I want to help give myself the ultimate biological reward. The way to do that is not to tell myself that I'm amazing. It's to prove it. It's to go out and do something, to challenge myself and do something where I grow and I achieve. And when we achieve, when we do something new, when we push the boundaries, we create. When we create, that's an act of God. And when we achieve and grow, when we develop our skills and develop our abilities, or help other people do the same, that is the most powerful thing we can do to feel better about ourselves. It's not necessarily intuitive, but it's the reality. And it's the reality according to the data. The most powerful way to improve self-esteem is to prove it, to achieve. Get out there and make a change. Make a change in ourselves, make a change in our environment. When we make a change, we have carried out an act of God. This is the reason that God created the world. This is the reason that the universe exists. And it's the reason that every single one of us exists. If there was something that all of you together could do, if there was nothing that I could do that all of you combined couldn't do, if all of you together were able to collectively between you do every single thing that I can do, I wouldn't be here. I'd be redundant and God wouldn't have wasted the energy in creating me. If God bothered to make me exist, that means there's an achievement, there's an act of God, an act of creation, a change in the world that needs me to make it. And God putting me here and giving me the ability to achieve and grow and to make a change is the ultimate kindness, the greatest, deepest goodness that could ever be given to a person. And this is true of every single one of us. God created the world lahetiv libruav, to do good and kindness to us. Now, doing good and kind doesn't mean patting us on the shoulder. It doesn't mean telling us we're amazing, and it doesn't mean giving us candies. It means giving us, because you know what? All of those things in excess, without work and struggle and achievement, end up leaving a person feeling worse off than they started. They can be helpful and they can be good in the right context, but the foundation, the basis of feeling good and healthy emotionally and spiritually is to grow, to work, to achieve, to be like God, to carry out, to perform acts of God, to create, to change. Every single one of us is here to do that. Every single one of us, every person alive, every one of us in this room has something to contribute that all 7.5 billion other people on planet Earth combined couldn't contribute. And the evidence of that is the fact that we're here. If everybody else in the world could achieve what you could achieve without you, all 7.5 billion combined could achieve everything that you can achieve, then you wouldn't be here. God doesn't make mistakes. God doesn't make bad investments. God doesn't create people or things by mistake. And every single person that's alive and every single person that exists and is alive because God is intentionally making them exist and intentionally making them be alive at every moment in time. There's at least an anecdote, a discussion between people, perhaps of different faiths, discussing what God would do if God wanted to destroy the world. If God was angry and wanted to get rid of the world, maybe God would make a flood. Well, no, because first of all, that would just kill life, but it wouldn't get rid of planet Earth. It wouldn't get rid of the universe. And besides, God said that he's not going to make another flood. Well, God could burn the universe. It wouldn't be here anymore, but there'd still be ashes and there'd still be vapor. But all of these are ridiculously absurd in that they're coming from the wrong place. God doesn't need to destroy the world. God could just not bother making it be here anymore, and it just wouldn't. God doesn't need to destroy. God's actively, intentionally making the world exist at every moment in time. All he has to do is stop bothering. It wouldn't be here anymore. So every one of us who's here is here because God is bothering to intentionally create each of us individually with the mind that each of us has and with the heart that each of us has, with the emotional profile that each of us has and with the tendencies and the strengths and the weaknesses and the good habits and the bad habits that each of us has. God is intentionally making us exist the way that we are, and if God's bothering to make each of us exist, that means it's worthwhile investment. And that means that the rest of humanity without any given one of us would be lacking. There's a contribution, an act of God, a change that every single one of us can make in the world that everybody else combined, all 7.5 billion other people combined, couldn't make. Because if it was, if there wasn't something that each of us could do that everyone else couldn't, it would have been a waste of God's effort. And God doesn't make mistakes. God doesn't waste. Wasting is a sin. It is a prohibition in the Torah to waste, and God observes all the commandments that he gives us, it says in Medrash. If God tells us not to waste, then God doesn't waste either. And if God bothers to put in the time and effort to make each of us exist, he has a very good reason. And that means that none of us is redundant. And there's a contribution, a change, an act of creation that the universe, that humanity, that Torah, that mitzvahs that God is waiting for, that every single one of us has something we can give and do and make and change that everybody else combined couldn't make and couldn't give and couldn't contribute. And keeping in mind that this is the purpose, once we have, when you do the math, we understand that we're here to contribute, and contributing is the most powerful thing a person can do. It's an act of God. And that God creates every single one of us individually, intentionally, the way we are at every moment in time. It's literally mathematically impossible that any one of us doesn't have a unique contribution to make that everybody else combined couldn't make without us. And I think this is something that's a good idea to always keep in your back pocket at the very least.